الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله
إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله صلى الله عليه وسلم يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم الذي خلقكم من نفس واحدة وخلق منها زوجها وبث منهما رجالا كثيرا ونساء واتقوا الله الذي تساءلون به والأرحام إن الله كان عليكم رقيبا يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وقولوا قولا سديدا يصلح لكم أعمالكم ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم ومن يطع الله ورسوله فقد فاز فوزا عظيما أما بعد فإن أصدق الحديث كتاب الله وخير هدي محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وشر الأمور محدثاتها وكل محدثات بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة وكل ضلالة في النار ثم أما بعد الحمد لله Allah has blessed us to make it to yet again another Yawm Jamaa'ah, another blessed day of gathering. يوم الجمعة الله سبحانه وتعالى said يا أيها الذين آمنوا إذا نودي للصلاة من يوم الجمعة فاسعوا إلى ذكر الله وذروا البيع ذلكم خير لكم إن كنتم تعلمون. O you who believe, when the call is made for Yawm al-Jum'ah, the Friday prayer, hasten to the remembrance of Allah and leave off all business. وَذُرُوا الْبَيْعَ That is better for you if you but knew. Yawm al-Jum'ah, the day of gathering. Jamaa'ah, coming together. Jamaa'ah, community. Jimma, intercourse, sexual intercourse. The coming together. Allah says, وَاعْتَصِمُوا بِحَبْلِ اللَّهِ جَمِيعًا. Jama'ah, hold, stick fast, hold firm to Hablillah, the rope or the cable or the cord of Allah. By yourself? No. Jami'ah, together. Jamaa'ah. Jama'at. Coming together. You know, in English there's an old idiom, there's an old phrase called the elephant in the room. Nowadays, even though information is readily available, even the simplest things you have to explain. Don't take it for granted that everyone knows what they mean. The phrase, the elephant in the room, indicates that there's something obvious, there's an issue or a matter or a situation that's obvious, is affecting everyone, but everyone acts like they don't see it. They don't talk about it, they don't mention it. And if you think about literally an elephant in a room, elephants are huge animals, even small baby ones. Imagine stuffing that elephant inside of a room, then everybody living or acting or doing whatever they do in the room, all pretending that this elephant isn't there. You can pretend it's not there, but it's going to be in your way. It's going to take up all of the space. It's going to be an annoyance because elephants don't belong in rooms. But for whatever reason, there are many times where a lot of situations become to the proverbial elephant in the room, and for this reason or that reason or for many reasons, people choose not to address, talk about, acknowledge, or discuss the elephant in the room. And in the religion or the way of life of Islam, you don't have one elephant in a room, you have a whole bunch of elephants in the room. You have elephants that have babies and they have grandchildren of elephants, and all of these generations of elephants are in the room. And the Muslims collectively, except for a few people here and there, chose not to discuss or choose not to discuss these elephants that are in the room. And the early generation of Muslims, they were not the type of people who would ignore the elephant in the room. They would discuss it. For example, when the Prophet ﷺ was commissioned as a prophet, he spent years giving da'wah, inviting people to Islam in Mecca. And with this situation, it got pretty dangerous for him. For a long time, he had support and protectors. His wife, Khadija, radiallahu ta'ala anha, was an emotional, an intellectual, a spiritual, and a financial support for him. She died after the year of boycott. They sanctioned and boycotted the Muslims. During that same year, his uncle, Abu Talib, who was his political support and protection against his own tribe of Quraysh, he died. This year is called the year of grief, Amul Hazm. These two situations gave the Prophet ﷺ deep sadness. And you have to think about this anytime people are going through deep sadness or depression and you try to dismiss it. You have a whole year in the life of the Prophet ﷺ called the year of grief. And also during this time, the Prophet ﷺ tried to take his message to the people of Ta'if, And the leaders of the people of Taif got the children, not the adults, not the big wigs, not the big homies, the children of the town to throw stones at the Prophet ﷺ and chase him out of the city. This situation was so disrespectful, so sad, so humiliating, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent Angel Jibril and said, listen, I got the angel that's in charge of the mountains with me. Allah sent us and he's at your disposal. Whatever you want to happen can happen right now. And the angel said, I will destroy these people. I will crush them between these two mountains. And the Prophet ﷺ said that no, I'll give them a pass. Perhaps their offspring will become Muslim. That's exactly what happened. All of these sad things happened to the Prophet ﷺ. And we know that the Hajj, we at the end of Hajj season, the Hajjis are returning. If you remember, you know that the Hajj was started way before Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, but it was purified and perfected by him. This was going on then. And 12 people came to the Prophet ﷺ. 12 people from a place called Yathrib, that we know now as Medina. And they came to him because they heard that he came to be a prophet, that he claimed to be a prophet, and they wanted to hear what he had to say. And also, they wanted to bring him to Medina to make peace. You know the history of Medina. It was a history, it was a place where you had a lot of different tribes, a little bit over a handful of different tribes, some of them Jewish, some of them Arab, and they was all fighting each other. They had the Battle of Bu'ath, and all of their tribal leaders had been killed. So you got the second generation of leaders that remained, and they were tired of war. So they was looking for someone, that figure, that could make peace amongst them. And so they came to hear about Islam and the Prophet ﷺ. And after they had accepted Islam, the Prophet ﷺ told them to give bay'ah. A bay'ah is a type of oath, an oath of allegiance, a pledge. And in Islam, you have many different types of bay'ah. And you find many or most of them exhibited or practiced or exemplified by the Prophet ﷺ and the Sahaba themselves. Ubadah ibn as-Samit, who was one of the early Muslims from Yathrib, Medina, who was a black man. Have to mention that, because you know they whitewashing Islamic history now. So you got to mention those things. And this is well documented. He's one of the Sahaba that is well documented. Because years later on, when the Muslims entered Egypt under the leadership of Amr ibn al-As, and they had a meeting, the Sahaba, the Muslims had a meeting with the Cyrus, or Muqawqas, or the Bishop of Alexandria. Their leader in this meeting was this same Sahaba, who narrated this hadith that I'm about to mention to you in a few minutes. Ubadah ibn as-Samit. And Muqawqas said, send someone else to talk to me. This black man is scaring me. He intimidates me. And the other Sahaba said, he's the best amongst us. He's the most righteous amongst us. And he is one of our elder statesmen. If you and we all look up to and respect him. This is Ubadah ibn Samit. He mentions, and Ubadah ibn Samit, radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, قال كنت في من حضر العقبة الأولى وكنا 12 رجلا فبايعنا رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم على بيعة النساء وذلك قبل أن تفترض الحرب على أن تشرك بالله شيء ولا نسرق ولا نزني ولا نقتل ولا نقتل أولادنا ولا تأتي ببهتان تفتريه من بين أيدينا وأرجلنا ولا تأسيه في معروف فإن وفيتم فلكم الجنة وإن كشيتم من ذلك شيء فأمركم إلى الله عز وجل إن شاء أذب وإن أذب وإن شاء غفر. Ubadah ibn Samit, may Allah be pleased with him, said, I was there at the first bay'ah of Aqaba. And this is what it's called. When you look in the seerah, because they met at a place called Aqaba, and they gave their oath of allegiance at this place. And it happened twice. And there were 12 men in total present. We gave bay'ah to the Messenger of Allah, may Allah bless him and grant him peace, based upon the bay'ah of the women. They called this particular oath of allegiance the bay'ah of the women, because if you look in Surah Al-Mumtahana, Surah 60, verse number 12, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, this verse was revealed years later after this event, that when the women come to you, examine them and take the bay'ah from them. And the wording in this bay'ah is almost the exact same wording of the wording of that verse. So Ubadah ibn Samit said, we gave the bay'ah of the women. That was before war was made obligatory. We pledged that we would not associate anything with Allah, that we would not steal, that we would not commit zina, which is fornication and adultery, that we would not kill our children, that we would not slander one another. And literally, the specific slander mentioned here is, for example, a woman gives birth to a child and she says that this child belongs to other than its rightful father, right? That we would not disobey him in what is right, and if we fulfilled our oath, then Jannah would be ours. And if we committed any of these sins, then our affair was left to Allah, the mighty and majestic, to punish or to forgive us as He pleased. So this is the oath that they took at Aqaba, Ula, the first time. And so you see early on that it wasn't a vague thing like, for example, we are told to make salat, we are told to pray. Allah didn't leave it vague and say, you know, just pray any kind of way you want. Prayer has a methodology, it has parameters, it has prerequisites. And once you fulfill those prerequisites, you can add to it whatever you want, as long as you don't violate or undermine those prerequisites. Just like everything, zakat, it has prerequisites. Yes, you can give charity this, that way, that way. But zakat, it has prerequisites. It has a time period. It has a minimum length. It has prerequisites. Fasting. Yes, you can fast all different times of the year. You can have a juice fast. You can have a water fast. You can have this fast. You can have that fast. But when Ramadan comes, there's prerequisites and there's mannerisms and there's do's and don'ts about how you fast and what you fast from. Yes, you can make pilgrimage, you can visit this, you can visit that, you can even visit Mecca during many times. But at least one time, if you have the ability to do so, you have to make Hajj. And Hajj has a specific manner that you do it and certain rights and prerequisites that must be fulfilled. And likewise, we talk about the unity of the Muslims. And we think it's just this vague thing that, you know, you just do it any kind of way you feel, any kind of methodology works when you make it up. The methodology that the Prophet ﷺ established this for this to happen is al-bay'ah, the oath of allegiance. Well, alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. وأفضل الصلاة وأتم التسليم على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين ورضي الله تعالى عن السادة التابعين وعلماء العاملين وأئمة الأربعة المجتهدين ومقلدين إلى يوم الدين أما بعد. After this oath of allegiance was given to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he sent Mus'ab ibn Umair back to Medina with them to teach them Islam. He established the Jummah prayer there, and he helped them understand the religion. Amazing thing about this is that the Prophet ﷺ didn't say, okay, I'm going to send one of my companions back with you to be your leader. No, he sent one of his companions with them to be their teacher. They already had their leader. It didn't matter that they were new Muslims and they didn't know any Islam. Islam is something that can be learned. Leadership is leadership, so he taught them. And by the time the next Hajj came around, there was a delegation from Medina, then known as Yathrib. They were coming for this Hajj in one group. They narrate that these Muslims, a lot of them were secret Muslims. So you had some mushrikeen and you had some Muslims in this group coming to Mecca. There were over 70 Muslims that met with the Prophet ﷺ at Aqaba again. And they gave another oath to the Prophet ﷺ. And they didn't ignore the elephant in the room. One of them said, oh, wait a minute, stop, whoa, stop, before you all do this. This is something serious here. Do you know that they're trying to kill this man? And if we take this oath to him, we got, what's his beef is our beef. And we're going to have to defend him. Everything's going to be at risk. They said, man, be quiet. We understand all this already. We already understand that. We come to get down. And they took their oath. The Quraysh heard about this. They know there's some secret thing going on. What's going on? And they went and asked the people from Yathrib. They didn't ask the Muslims, they asked the mushrikeen, the volunteers. They said, no, ain't no meeting going on. We don't know nothing about it. They said, okay. So you see, even from early on, when the Prophet ﷺ didn't have any authority, he didn't have any sulta, he didn't have any real physical, tangible power. The way that they organized the Jamaa'ah was to bay'ah, the oath of allegiance. And this continued on and on and on and on and on, non-stop. When the Sahaba would take Shahada, they wouldn't just say, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, Ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. They would give their Shahada and they would give the bay'ah. The proof of this is when Najashi took his Shahada. That's just one proof. He wrote in his letter, which is in all of the books of Sirah and the books of Hadith, he said, I have become Muslim at the hand of your cousin and I have given the bay'ah through him to you. When Amr ibn al-As and Khalid ibn Walid, they both took Shahada at the same time. It's well documented because these are some influential people that became Muslim. It's in all the books of Sirah, it's in all the Hadith. When they came and embraced Islam, they embraced Islam, they took Shahada, and they gave their bay'ah. That's the elephant in the room in Islam. We take Shahada, but we don't want responsibility nor accountability. In certain martial Asian societies, martial law society, they call that a ronin, a renegade. So you have nowadays, majority of Muslims are renegade Muslims. But we pray to, oh Allah, please relieve the suffering of the Muslims of this land and that land and this land and here and abroad. But we don't pay attention to what brought about relief from the first Muslims. As we said, you have many types of bay'ah. You have what's called bay'atul mawt. You find that the Prophet ﷺ did that right before the Treaty of Hudaybiyah. When they thought Uthman ibn Affan had been killed by the Quraysh. The Prophet ﷺ took a bay'ah from all of the Sahaba that they would avenge the death of Uthman, even if they all died in the process. Allah refers to it in the Quran, Surah Al-Baqarah, bay'atul tahta shajara, the bay'ah that you took under the tree. And this bay'ah had such a symbolic value. It was so special to the believers that people would visit that tree that the Sahaba took bay'ah under. They would visit it. It was like a tourist attraction. So much so that Umar ibn al-Khattab cut the tree down. Because they would take it a little bit too far. Allah mentioned the tree in the Quran as well, subhanAllah. What happened under the tree? The bay'ah happened under the tree. Ikramah ibn Abi Jahl, who was the son of Abu Jahl, obviously by his name. He killed a lot of Muslims in the battle of Uhud. He later on became Muslim. He also took this bay'atul mawt. He was a general or a leader of an army of Muslims. And he gave a little talk to the Muslims. They were fighting the Romans. Later on rebranded as the Byzantines. And he said, listen, I don't know about you all, but I did a lot of dirt. I sacrificed a lot. I sacrificed a lot against Islam. And a lot of you have a story similar as mine. It's only right that we should sacrifice even more now that we recognize the truth and we become Muslim. Let's take a bay'atul mawt. That none of us come back from this battle. We all die on this battlefield. And all of the people under him took that oath. And many of you hear the last part of the story. You hear about this battle, and you hear about the people that's wounded in the trench, and they finally got some water, and the water was being passed to the first one, and the first one said, no, I don't need it, give it to my brother, needs it more than me. And then he said the same thing, and the water went, everybody passed up on the water until it got to the last person, and the one who was bringing them water brought it to the first person. Then that first person that was offered the water, he had died, and the same thing with the second and third one. A lot of you heard the story before when you read the seerah and the history of Islam. But what you don't understand is that those people in that trench who died of thirst, those were the people who were still alive who made that bay'atul mawt, that bay'ah, that pledge to die. They didn't die in the actual battle. Some of them were wounded and hurt and exhausted, but they made that bay'ah, and so they passed water, and Allah gave them what they asked for, what they pledged to, that death. You have the bay'ah when a person pledges his oath of allegiance to a sheikh, a teacher, a spiritual guide. He pledges that he will obey him. This person, he's traveled the path further than me. He knows what it's about. And so I pledge to follow his regimen, his program. I pledge to obey him, and even those things that I don't understand don't make no sense to me, because he knows the path. He's been there before me. He's traveled it already. I always give the example of this type of oath, like the movie I grew up watching, The Karate Kid. He didn't understand what the teacher was doing for him. He didn't think he was learning how to fight. He had him painting his fence, washing his car, and everything. And meanwhile, he's going to school getting bullied and beat up. He didn't get it. He didn't understand. So one day he got tired of all of this. He said, man, I'm not learning how to fight. I'm not learning anything. He said, I'm getting beat up. He didn't understand that his teacher was training his body how to move involuntarily. And he screamed at him and threw punches at him in his body because he was painting so much and wiping so much that he knew how to block. It's similar to the oath that you give to a sheikh. You may not understand your level. If Islam is so low, you don't understand what he's teaching. You understand the wisdom behind it. But he does. He's been there before you. He's training you. He's training your nuts. So, and we can give many more examples. But you can see how in Islam, the bay'ah has always been there. And whenever we moved away from Jamaa'ah and bay'ah, I don't care what country, what time period that you look at, you find harm and the destruction of Muslims, and not only Muslims, the non-Muslims. You find oppression, because the Muslims are the leaders and the torchbearers in society. And when we give up our tradition, not only do we suffer for it, the non-Muslims suffer for it. During the period of the Salaf, the early period of Islam, Islam entered Al-Andalus, Spain, the year 711 in this calendar. Early period, middle period of the Salaf, first 300 years of Islam. Islam established there, bay'ah, oath of allegiance. Even in the second wave, Khalifa Abdullah, he came through, brought back a renaissance. All of these cities that you hear about, Khutbah. You don't know Khutbah in Arabic, you know I said Khutbah, right? One's English, one's Arabic, same thing. Many scholars came from Spain. Islam growing. The first universities were Islamic universities. And the knowledge was given to Europe through the Muslims in Spain, Al-Andalus. But after a period of time, the Muslims forgot about the principles of Jamaa'ah. They forgot about the principles of bay'ah. Then there was a period of time, what they call in history, Mulukul Tawa'if. Tawa'if, like Ta'ifa, plural. Petty kings, Muluk Malik, the period of petty kings. You know what? I'm an Amir, I'm a king, I got my little small little village, I'm running things. You Muslim, you got your little petty little emirate over there too. And we Muslim and our blood is supposed to be sacred to one another, but I'm going to be fighting and killing you. And on top of this, you got all these sexy women over here. Some have all these harems going on. They were fighting one another. So much so that while they were fighting one another, the Reconquista had got started. And they had taken back Spain and Portugal, city by city, one at a time, divide and conquer. Those of you on social media, there's this little clip of two deers or whatever fighting one another, right? And there's some other deers in the distance. But these two antelope or deers, whatever, they're fighting each other. And they don't see this lion coming from a distance. The animals that's not fighting, they see him coming. They run. The two animals that's fighting, they don't see it until it's too late. And that's the Muslim Ummah right there. We be fighting each other so much and disunited and fighting with each other about how to be united. Ain't that an oxymoron? We fight each other about how to be united. We're divided about how to be united. That's us. Now we don't recognize the calamity until it's too late to do anything about it. And so the same thing happened with the Muslims in Spain. Until the year 1492 came around. And a lot of y'all don't know this. A lot of you don't know that when Queen Isabella and King Ferdinand were celebrating the fall of Granada, the most southern part of Spain, where they finally dusted off the Muslims. Christopher Columbus was literally at the celebration. I'm not speaking figuratively at all. He was literally there. Queen 1592. The money that financed this trip, the navigators on his boat, Muslims, the Muslim well financed this trip, and he comes over here and supposedly discovers America. That place was Al-Andalus, Spain, Portugal. Do you know 100 years later, a Portuguese army, yeah, only 100 years, a Portuguese army goes into Morocco. How did Portuguese get an army? Yeah, I took it back. That's not a Muslim state no more. They go into Morocco, and with some Muslims in their army, they sacked Timbuktu. This was 1591. A lot of y'all not making the connection. It's vague, and we're coming to a conclusion. We don't make the connection. Muslim division, argumentation, fighting, getting away from Jamaa'ah and Bay'ah led to the Muslims losing Spain, which led to the disbelievers forming an army that started the slave trade. They invaded Africa. And the whole civilization built here that we don't connect whatsoever to Muslims being divided with each other, between one another. One thing leads to another. We got short vision. We don't see it. We don't see how one thing is a domino effect. And so all of the oppression that you can talk about going on right now, if you trace it back, well, what caused this? Well, what caused that? Well, what caused that? You go back to Muslims not doing their job. You cause the Muslims being renegade and being selfish, and selfish, and only caring about themselves and their families, and not adhering to the principles of Jamaa'ah and Bay'ah. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَاعْتَصِمُوا بِحَبْلِ اللَّهِ جَمِيعًا وَلَا تَفَرَّقُوا, hold to the rope of Allah, Jami'ah, all together, and do not be divided. There's barakāt in the Bay'ah. There's blessings in the Bay'ah. See, you trying to get around this, the elephant in the room, because you want to do what you want to do. You don't want nobody to be able to tell you to do anything. That's not our problem. Every one of us want to be an Amir, a leader, a chief. Or what your chief, no Indian. Everybody. And you don't understand the trickle-down effect. You don't have a leader, so your wife feel like she don't have a leader. She ain't got to listen to you. I'm your husband, so what? It's the same principle. Your wife don't listen to you. You don't listen to no one else. You don't answer to nobody. Your wife don't answer to you. Your children don't answer to y'all. I mean, when it's going to stop? You don't understand the ripple effect. You think your disobedience is going to stop with you? It's not going to stop with you. It's going to go on and on and on and on. And so some of us become the strangers. And we go against the grain. We go against the tide. And we be like those whom the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, Tuba lil ghuraba, glad tidings to the strangers. Sometimes being cool ain't always it. Being cool in high school and college ain't always it. You end up dropping out, getting the lowest grades than the one that you made fun of, the strangers in school. You got to beg him for a job later on. We have to be strangers like that with Islam. But most Muslims want to be renegades, want to do what they want to do, don't want to answer to no one, and then want to pass the blame on why this situation is the way it is. Walhamdulillah, rabbil alameen. ربنا اتنا في الدنيا حسنه وفي الاخره حسنه وقنا عذاب النار ومن حسنه